Our film starts on an old ship as we see a bunch of dead bodies. It's shown that the ship is a Demeter, aka the ship that Dracula came to London on in the original Bram Stoker novel. We then fast forward to the distant year 2000 where a guy named Van Helsing is talking to his employee about a weapon he bought. Through the conversation, we find out that the older gentleman is the grandson of the original Abraham Van Helsing, and he is an antique collector. His employee Simon, we find out, has a thing for Van Helsing's assistant Selena, but it goes nowhere. We then see a group of thieves pull off an Ocean's 11 style heist of Van Helsing's property in search of valuables, but are disappointed that after all the work and high-tech doodads they used, they don't find much of anything other than vampire skulls. It's then revealed that Selena is in on the heist and is the one who told the thieves that there must be something expensive, or else Van Helsing would not have the amount of security he does. While all this is happening, we see Van Helsing extracting blood from leeches and injecting it into his arm. Back with the thieves, they find their way into a locked tomb, but instead of finding money, they find a metal coffin. The head thief Marcus assumes that all the creepy vampire stuff is just to scare people away, and the coffin must contain jewels or some kind of wealth, so he tells his lock guy to get the coffin open. Then one of the other thieves moves the coffin, activating Indiana Jones temple-style traps which kills two of them. Marcus then orders the remaining members of this group to blow the wall open so they can escape, while we see blood from the dead thieves seeping into the coffin. After the guys try to leave, Marcus and Selena orders them to take the coffin with them. Van Helsing walks in just in time to see the coffin gone. We then skip to a girl having a nightmare as her roommate brings her coffee and tells her they're going to be late. Not sure what they're late to, since the next scene is them walking down the streets of New Orleans with drinks in their hands. Back in London, Van Helsing tells Simon about the robbery. Simon questions why the police weren't called, and Van Helsing tells him that they can't be involved due to some legal issues with the stuff that was taken, and that he is heading off to take care of the issues himself. Simon tries to talk him out of it, but Van Helsing puts him in charge of the shop. Back with the thieves, they're on a cargo plane struggling to get the coffin open. One of them cuts himself on one of the crosses attached to the coffin, and the blood again seeps in. The coffin begins to start smoking, resulting in the thief all of a sudden realizing he just had to turn a cross to open it, so clearly without that technology they aren't the smartest. In the coffin is a body with a knight's helmet on, covered in leeches. The genius thief then flicks a leech onto his own eye, then has a tantrum. He then decides to try to move the body because he sees what he believes are jewels under it, just for it to wake up and kill him. Henchman number 2 then goes to the cargo bay, and when he can't find the first guy, decides to check out the weird sounds he's hearing further in. He sees the coffin, opens it just to find the other henchman before he is ambushed by the vampire who was in the coffin. The vampire throws the guy through the cabin door, transforms back into human form, hypnotizes Selena, and then bites her. Marcus shoots the vampire a few times, which does nothing. That is until a bullet ricochets through the fuselage, letting light in, which burns the vampire. Good plan until the plane ends up in a storm, which blocks the sun, allowing the vampire to kill Marcus. We then see that the vampire and the girl from earlier can somehow see each other as if they're connected somehow. The girl, thinking she's in a dream, tries to wake herself up, but the vampire confronts her, telling us that her name is Mary. He leaves when the roommate shows up. Mary tells her roommate Lucy that something is wrong. On the bright side for people into vampire women, since it's a vampire film and a Dracula one at that, the one you should be worried about is clearly the one named Lucy. After Mary goes to church to confess, we see Van Helsing arrive at an airport where a hot reporter named Valerie is reporting on the crash of the thieves' plane. This is one of those hardcore news stations because they show dead bodies and everything. Definitely not your CNN and Fox News. Probably on premium cable, I guess. Van Helsing, seeing his coffin, heads to where the news says it is, while we see that Simon has followed him to the U.S. Back with hot reporter Valerie, she's still in the bayou trying to say words into a microphone, which, granted, is kinda hard. Because she takes too long, that gives Dracula time to kill her camera guy and go after her. There goes the idea that the camera person never dies. Gotta say, I do like this Dracula. He has really good taste and he doesn't waste time like the other movie versions. Much like before, Mary, who is at work at a record store, can see what Dracula is doing. She tells Lucy she has to go. Van Helsing arrives to the makeshift hospital that the news stated the coffin and the bodies from the plane crash are being kept. He loads his weapon and sees that the coffin is empty. Simon then appears and tells him he had no plans of letting Van Helsing do whatever he's going to do alone. Van Helsing tells him that whatever he sees, know it's real. That's when Van Helsing opens Selena's body bag and now a vampire Selena jumps out. Van Helsing kills the dumbest of the thieves, who's still dumb after death, and Van Helsing tells Simon to go after the rest. Never mind, Danny Masterson isn't dead. Comes out and grabs Simon, apologizes for not knowing what's wrong with him, before Simon shoots him several more times with stakes, this time killing him, I think. Simon then sees another body bag move. Before he can stab it, a vampire Marcus comes out and attacks Simon for liking Selena. Simon takes a cross spike and jabs Marcus in the eye, resulting in him jumping out a window and taking off. Next up on the vampire gauntlet is Selena. Selena is smart, knows Simon is into her, and seduces him. Van Helsing meanwhile kills one of the other thieves, then pins Selena to a wall with a shot from his middle stake gun. Simon has the chance to finish her, but chooses not to, and the cops take Selena in. In the car, with Van Helsing and Simon, they argue about the whole vampires and Dracula are a real thing. Then Van Helsing explains that Dracula can't be killed, which is why he was just kept sealed away. We then learn that Van Helsing is indeed Abraham Van Helsing, and he's been keeping himself alive via injecting himself with Dracula blood filtered through leeches. He then tells Simon about Mary, who we find out is his daughter, and that he believes that Dracula is there to find her as they have the same blood thanks to the leech treatments. Back with Mary, she's still at church trying to explain her situation, but it doesn't go very well, so she runs off. At the police station, they interrogate Selena about her vampirism. She does a bunch of fun party tricks, including being able to see through the one-way glass. Vampire Selena is a real seductress and goes hardcore into the moaning and flirting. Dracula then appears, distracting the cops enough for Selena to break through the glass and feed on one cop, while the other poor guy has to settle for being bitten by Dracula. Continuing our tour of New Orleans, Dracula eventually finds the Virgin music store that Mary works at, and we see every woman in the store wanting to throw themselves at him. He sees Lucy and asks her where Mary is. She introduces herself as Lucy Westerman, and if her fate wasn't obvious before, it's pretty clear now. Lucy takes random dude she met at music store home, and when Mary isn't home, she goes full-on horn dog on Dracula, inviting him in. Let's be real, this movie makes vampirism seem quite awesome. Dracula decides to get his vitamin C and has his way with Lucy, including floaty ceiling sex, which I think would be super difficult. But then he bites her, which Mary consents. She heads back to the store where random worker number 3 tells her that Lucy left with Dracula. She's then confronted by Simon. They have one of those conversations where he has really important info to tell her, but chooses to be really vague instead of just spitting it out, resulting in her running off. When she does, Marcus shows up and he and Simon fight it out. Marcus finds out the hard way that vampires can't touch silver when he attempts to use the silver stakes. Simon then gets the upper hand and decapitates Marcus. At Mary's place, Van Helsing arrives and goes looking for her. Dracula then attacks him. When Mary gets home, she gets a call from Lucy, who taunts her that she's with her father in a very Scream-like moment, where the only thing that's missing is her asking her what her favorite scary movie is. Mary then grabs a bat and heads upstairs, where you see that the call was coming from inside the house. Mary heads to Lucy's bedroom, where she sees a lot of blood on the bed. She looks under it and finds a very dead Van Helsing. That's pretty jacked up that he lived all that time just to get killed off camera. Mary goes to call 911 just for Vampire Lucy to grab her, telling her how great it is being a vampire. Mary heads down the hall just for the bride trifecta to make themselves known, with Valerie and Selena joining Lucy and telling her how jealous they are of Dracula's obsession with her. Dracula then appears, Mary runs, and as Dracula comes after her in wolf form, Simon shoots him with a metal stake. Off camera, Mary tells Simon about what happened to Van Helsing, as the next scene we see is them in a car with Mary reading Van Helsing's diary that Simon gave her. Mary suggests they head to a church to hide from Dracula, where Simon then explains to her that he's helping her due to how much her dad meant to him. He gives her the rundown of vampires even though he just burned them himself, and Dracula shows up. Simon tells Mary to run while Simon attacks Dracula with a Bible. Mary runs to a graveyard, which is always the best place to go hide from vampires, while Dracula and Simon follow. Dracula eventually finds Mary and gives her the "you're like me and don't know it, so everything that's mine is yours" speech before disappearing with her. Fast forward to Simon now being on Bourbon Street, and as he walks, the brides taunt him. He then goes to an empty side street where they attack, and we get the scene that rightfully dominated the trailer for the film of hot vampire women being hot. Simon then attacks with a piece of wood. While Lucy and Selena get out the way, unfortunately, Valerie doesn't, and we're down probably the hottest bride. Over with Dracula, he bites and turns Mary. Again, I like this guy because unlike other Draculas, he doesn't play around. He sees what he wants, finds it, and does what he has to do instead of beating around the bush about it. After she turns, she sees him talking to a mural of Jesus. In the conversation, it's hinted that Dracula is actually Judas from the Bible. He He then takes Mary into a room where Simon is tied up by Selena and Lucy. Dracula tells Mary to feed on Simon. She walks over to him, fangs out, and bites him. She then walks over to the vampire hunting knife he had and tells Dracula that she wants Simon's head, which he agrees to. She then walks over to Simon while the other brides hold him and swings, but instead of killing him, she decapitates Lucy, then impales Dracula. Simon, who wasn't bitten after all, gets his final battle with Selena, while Mary and Dracula fight it out, crouching tiger style. Simon eventually cuts Selena's head off with gardening shears, then heads outside to help Mary with Dracula. He distracts Dracula long enough for Mary to wrap a cord around his neck and they both fall off the roof, with Mary now holding on to a hanging Dracula. As the sun comes up, Dracula lets go of Mary, who falls from the roof. Mary survives the fall, being that she's a vampire, and in Dracula's dying breath, he releases her from the vampire curse before bursting into flames from the sun coming up. The film ends with Mary writing in Van Helsing's journal. We see that she now lives in London and has taken over her father's duty as keeper of Dracula's body, and with that ends probably the best modern non-period Dracula film made to date. Do you agree? Are there other incarnations of Dracula that take place in the modern era that you find better? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you like these recaps, please leave a like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to know every time I update. There is now an option to be a channel member where you'll get access to exclusive recaps from late-night vampire catalogs like Showtime, Cinemax After Dark, USA Up All Night, and much more. If you want to help my channel grow, please check out my Patreon, where members can get exclusive content that can't be uploaded on YouTube, along with download options. Link is in the description.